In a world where myths whisper across time and ancient stories glow quietly behind the veil of memory, there is one tale that shimmers more than most. A bridge, they say, born of fire and color, a path stretched between worlds, glowing with promise, guarded by silence. Was it only legend or something more? Tonight, we journey across that forgotten arc, through stories carved in starlight and kept alive in dream. This is not just a tale of gods and realms, but of return, of resonance, of something lost, waiting to be remembered. This is the entire story of Bifröst, the rainbow bridge between worlds, and the mystery of whether it was, in truth, a Stargate. Now, let us begin. In the stillness between myth and memory, there lies a shimmering path that connects the heavens to the world of men, a radiant arc of color known as Bifröst. To many, it was simply the rainbow, fleeting and beautiful, appearing after storms to dazzle the skies. But to the Norse, Bifröst was no ordinary arc of light. It was a living bridge, spanning from Midgard, the realm of humanity, to Asgard, the celestial stronghold of the gods. This bridge, pulsing with colors beyond human comprehension, was not merely a symbol, it was a gateway, a link between planes of existence, and some wonder, was it more than myth? Was it, in truth, a kind of Stargate? In ancient times, knowledge was passed not just through words, but through symbols, dreams, and sacred stories whispered through the ages. The Norse myths were vessels of such memory, encoding cosmology, spirituality, and perhaps even technology within their poetic lines. The story of Bifröst begins in these myths, rooted in a cosmos where 9 realms existed, interwoven and suspended like fruits on the branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Bifröst served as a cosmic road connecting Midgard to Asgard, and it was said only gods and those granted special permission could tread upon it. Described as a burning rainbow, ever shimmering, Bifröst was guarded by the watchful god Heimdall, who could hear grass grow and see for miles beyond sight. He stood day and night at its entrance, horn in hand, ready to blow the Jallarhorn to signal the onset of Ragnarök, the end of days. But what was this bridge really? Could it have been a metaphor for divine connection? Or was it something more tangible? Something perhaps forgotten or hidden? Across cultures and epochs, we see recurring themes of luminous bridges or pathways connecting our world with the divine. The Greeks spoke of Iris, the rainbow messenger of the gods. In Hindu traditions, Indra rode on rainbows. The Navajo envisioned the rainbow bridge as a protective force. Why did these disparate cultures converge on this specific image, the arc of light connecting realms? And why did the Norse, a people famed for their understanding of the stars and navigation, imagine this bridge as a burning, glowing phenomenon that could shatter under great strain? The old Eddic poems speak of the end, Ragnarök, when Bifröst would break, as the fire giants marched across it, leading to its destruction, a symbol of a cosmic collapse. Or perhaps a device overloaded, a portal shattered by too much energy or misuse? For those who view myth as more than metaphor, the idea that Bifröst was a kind of Stargate is not as far-fetched as it might seem. Stargates, portals, wormholes, These are concepts not unfamiliar to modern physics. Bridges between space and time. Pathways through dimensions. Could the ancients have had knowledge of such phenomena? If so, how did they describe it? How would a people from 1,000 years ago express the existence of a multidimensional bridge? Perhaps they would say, it burned, that it shone with light like the rainbow, that only gods could use it. And perhaps they would guard it with a vigilant deity, ensuring its secrets remained safe from the unworthy. These ideas now begin to shimmer with possibility. Bifröst was said to be constructed with 3 primary colors, and that it blazed with fire to keep the unworthy from crossing. This notion of fire, not as destruction, but as purification, recurs in many mythologies. Fire cleanses, fire protects, and fire hides. In the Norse context, it also acts as a veil between worlds. Was this fire literal, or was it a description of a force field, a form of energy barrier? What kind of technology could present itself as fire to a pre-industrial society? The idea that the bridge could not be crossed by mortals, save with divine permission, echoes the concept of energetic thresholds, frequency gates. In some modern speculative theories, only those in alignment with certain vibrational frequencies could pass through advanced portals. This aligns uncannily with the mythology. Only gods and initiates could step upon Bifröst. Could the rainbow colors themselves be symbolic of these frequencies? Each color a vibration, a layer of existence, a coded key. The figure of Heimdall becomes central here, described as the whitest of the gods, possessing golden teeth and unmatched senses. He embodies light, sound, and sight, all forms of frequency and perception. Some interpretations see Heimdall as not just a guardian, but a kind of interface or mechanism, perhaps even the operator of the bridge. His horn, Gjallarhorn, which when blown echoes through the worlds, might be seen not as a war signal but as an activation device, a kind of resonance key that opens the portal or warns of its impending overload. We are deep within symbolic territory now, where technology and myth coalesce. The ancient Norse did not speak of quantum particles or electromagnetism, but they knew of thresholds, of divine pathways, and of energies beyond the human spectrum. Bifröst, to them, was as real as the stars above, yet charged with sacredness. It is described as trembling under the weight of the gods, yet strong enough to hold them. A delicate balance, like a resonance field on the edge of stability. In the mythic cycles, we are told that Bifröst will one day break. This detail is important. If it were simply symbolic, why speak of its destruction? Why make its collapse a central image of the apocalypse? Unless it was a system, something that could fail, something finite and functional. Perhaps this is why Heimdall's role is so crucial. Not just to protect, but to manage, to maintain the equilibrium of the bridge. When the balance is broken, the worlds fall into chaos. Yggdrasil itself, the great tree in whose branches all realms reside, is also threatened in these stories. The cosmic tree and the rainbow bridge, 2 pillars of the Norse cosmology, are destabilized at the end of time. This is not merely poetic language. It could be encoding an understanding of a grand celestial system. perhaps even an interdimensional network, where Bifröst is a conduit, a passage, a central node. The deeper one looks into Norse myth, the more it seems to echo ideas far beyond its time. From Valkyries descending beams of light to fairy warriors, to Odin's eye sacrificed for knowledge at Mimir's well, these are not primitive tales, but rich allegories that may contain fragments of forgotten sciences. And Bifröst, ever glowing, ever elusive, stands as perhaps the brightest clue of them all. To understand the deeper nature of Bifröst, we must return to the roots of Norse cosmology, where nothing exists in isolation. Every element, every being, is part of an intricate web, just as the 9 realms are suspended upon the branches of Yggdrasil. Bifröst is not merely a bridge. It is a thread in that web, vibrating with purpose and mystery. Its role as a connector between Midgard and Asgard positions it as a gateway between human consciousness and the divine, a threshold that, once crossed, opens the mind to higher truths. Scholars have long debated the etymology of the word Bifröst. Some suggest it may derive from bifra, meaning to shimmer or quiver, and röst, possibly meaning a roadway or even a rushing stream. Taken together, Bifröst could mean the shimmering path or the trembling way. This shimmering, this trembling, it suggests energy, vibration, movement, not entirely visible to the naked eye. Could this be a reference to a dynamic energy bridge, operating just beyond human perception? In modern theoretical physics, the concept of wormholes and Einstein-Rosen bridges presents fascinating parallels. These are theoretical tunnels connecting distant points in spacetime, collapsible pathways through which information or even matter could travel, perhaps instantly. If such a phenomenon were real and somehow accessible in the distant past, how would ancient cultures describe it? Would they speak of a road in the sky, of burning lights, of divine permissions? Would they say it trembles under the weight of the gods? Ancient Norse seers and poets may have encoded these advanced ideas in the only language available to them, myth, and perhaps they weren't alone. Cultures across the globe spoke of bridges between realms, the rainbow serpent of Aboriginal lore, the Milky Way as a celestial path in Mayan cosmology, the Bridge of Chinvato in Zoroastrian belief. All connect the world of the living with something greater, often something divine or mysterious. These stories, born in isolation, carry a strange similarity. Perhaps they all hint at something real, something lost in the veils of time. If Bifröst is indeed a symbolic or even technological Stargate, then its importance becomes even more profound. It is not just a means of transportation, but a rite of passage, a journey from ignorance to understanding, from matter to spirit. Only the worthy may cross, not because of elitism, but because the journey transforms the traveler. Just as shamans would ascend in altered states to the upper worlds, crossing spiritual thresholds, so too do the gods cross Bifröst, perhaps as much through inner transformation as outer distance. The presence of color in the description of Bifröst is telling. The rainbow has 7 primary colors, each corresponding to different frequencies of light. In esoteric traditions, these same colors align with the 7 chakras, the energy centers of the human body. Could Bifröst represent an alignment of energetic pathways, A bridge, not just across space, but within the soul? If so, then its collapse at Ragnarök is not just the end of the world, but the collapse of alignment, of harmony, of divine order. And when Bifröst breaks, it signals that the balance has been lost. The bridge cannot bear the weight of imbalance, whether spiritual, cosmic, or technological. The fire giants who cross it during Ragnarök may not be literal beings, but symbols of chaotic forces, energies that overwhelm the system. The very fact that this bridge is capable of destruction gives credence to the idea that it was once real, or, at the very least, functioned within a real system of order now forgotten. To explore Bifröst as a Stargate also means to reconsider the gods who used it. The Aesir were not distant, unknowable deities. They were deeply involved in the affairs of humans, walking among them, even interfering in their destinies. Odin, the Allfather, sacrificed himself on the branches of Yggdrasil to gain the wisdom of runes, a symbolic act of transcending dimensions. Thor traveled across Bifröst to confront threats in the other realms. These stories place the gods not as abstract forces, but as travelers, navigators of a cosmic network. If we interpret the gods as beings with access to advanced knowledge or technology, then Bifröst becomes something akin to a controlled access portal, requiring specific frequencies, permissions, and perhaps even biological compatibility. Heimdall, with his heightened senses and ever-watchful gaze, could be a sentinel AI, a guardian system monitoring who may pass through. His golden teeth and radiant presence may symbolize more than aesthetics. They might be remnants of an interface with the bridge itself, a being modified to control it. Even the notion that the bridge could be overused hints at systems operating under energetic limits. When the giants cross in force, the bridge collapses. Perhaps much like how a power grid can overload or a circuit can burn out. This again lends itself to a vision of Bifröst as more than myth, as a functioning construct. But one must ask, where would such knowledge come from? In the deepest recesses of Norse legend lies the idea that wisdom and power often come from great sacrifice. Odin plucks out his eye to drink from Mimir's well, a source of timeless knowledge. Could Mimir's well be a symbol for a data source, a memory storage from a forgotten civilization, or even an off-world origin? Odin's trade is not merely poetic, it's transactional. He gives sight for insight, perhaps exchanging limited perception for expanded understanding. And what of the 9 realms themselves? Are they metaphors for different aspects of existence, or literal worlds connected by a higher dimensional axis? In modern theoretical models, higher dimensions could exist beyond our perception. A structure like Yggdrasil could be seen as a multidimensional framework, with Bifröst as a tunnel within that structure, a stabilized passage between realms operating on different frequencies, or in separate branes of reality. Asgard, home of the gods, sits at the top, but it's never quite described in consistent physical terms. It glows, it hovers, it transcends the normal laws of the world. Could Asgard represent an orbiting station, a separate plane, a phase-shifted world only accessible through vibrational calibration? In this lens, Bifröst becomes not merely a connector but a transformer, altering the frequency of the traveler to match the destination realm. These ideas are not foreign to advanced theoretical science. The notion that different universes might be separated by frequency, that travel might require vibrational realignment. These are echoes of possibilities that modern physics is only beginning to probe. The Norse myths may have hidden this understanding in allegory, preserving it as best they could. And so the Rainbow Bridge, once just a beautiful image in a children's tale, becomes something infinitely deeper, a system of travel, of transformation, of cosmic order, and perhaps a technology so advanced it became indistinguishable from divine magic. In the echoes of these ancient tales, something stirs, a memory, or perhaps a warning. The collapse of Bifröst at Ragnarök does not just signify the end of a pathway. It signifies the failure of the connection between realms, the severing of divine communication. When that shimmering arc crumbles beneath the weight of chaos, the gods lose their ability to intervene, and the world is left to unravel. This is not only myth, it is a message. Something once vital, once protected and revered, was lost, and with it, the balance of the cosmos began to falter. The fire giants who bring about this collapse are not just creatures of flame and destruction. They represent entropy, the unmaking force. Their journey across Bifröst is a breach, a hostile crossing. But why would the bridge, supposedly divine, permit this at all? Unless the system, the Stargate, was overwhelmed. Perhaps Bifröst operated under specific conditions: balance of power, purity of intent, resonance of frequency. Once those parameters were violated, the system collapsed, like a reactor core breached, or a field overloaded. And yet, Bifröst endures in memory. Even after Ragnarök, the myths hint at rebirth. A new world, arising from the ashes. The bridge gone, but perhaps not forgotten. The knowledge, buried. The technology, hidden. This is where the line between legend and lost history begins to blur. What if Bifröst was not merely a bridge of the gods, but a remnant of an ancient civilization, one whose knowledge was scattered after a cataclysm? A global collapse, perhaps echoed in other cultures. Atlantis, Lemuria, the deluge. These global flood myths often include symbols of light and bridges to the heavens, stairways, ladders, arcs of light, all pointing to something greater. The rainbow, in its multicolored form, spans the sky after rain, after cleansing, as if reminding the world of a promise or a memory. And in this way, Bifröst becomes more than just a literal pathway. It becomes a memory key, a symbol deeply imprinted on the collective unconscious. The Norse, known for their oral tradition, passed these stories for centuries before writing them down. Yet the structure, the consistency of the myths, reveals an underlying order. Not chaotic imagination, but encoded patterns. Patterns that suggest purpose, memory, preservation, and the bridge, always there, always glowing, always guarded. One cannot ignore Heimdall's role here. He is not a warrior by accident. He is stationed at the threshold. He hears what no one else hears, sees what no one else sees. These qualities, superhuman by design, imply more than godlike status. They suggest enhancement. Heimdall is not merely divine. He may be constructed, altered, aligned to the bridge itself, a part of it, a sensor, a living interface. Perhaps Heimdall is what remains of an ancient order, designed to monitor and protect the passage between worlds. And the Gjallarhorn, always close at hand, a horn that can be heard in all realms. Its sound, once blown, begins the unraveling of the bridge. Could this horn be more than a signal? Could it be a frequency disruptor, a shutdown command, a failsafe? When the system is compromised, the horn sounds and the bridge is no more. The system collapses, not just because of invasion, but because it must be destroyed before it is corrupted beyond repair. When the horn sounds, the fabric of the realms begins to quiver, not because of mere noise, but because the resonance has been altered. Gjallarhorn is not just an alarm. It is the sound of systems disengaging, of connections unraveling. The myth tells us that the sound reaches all worlds, a detail too specific to ignore. In the context of a multidimensional network, this becomes a signal broadcast, a universal tone that shifts reality itself. And Heimdall, the one who holds it, may be less a person and more a guardian key, a sentient mechanism of last resort. As the bridge falls, and with it, the access to higher realms, we are reminded that such connections are precious. They must be preserved, maintained, honored. If the ancients did inherit or discover a technology capable of bridging realms, it would have been sacred and dangerous. Perhaps only the highest initiates were permitted to use it, and even they, with caution. The Norse myths hint at this reverence, and at the consequences when power exceeds wisdom. The collapse of Bifröst does not mean the end of travel between worlds. It simply marks the end of that particular system. And so we must ask, are there others? If the Rainbow Bridge is but one access point, might there have been more? Other nodes in the network? Other Stargates? Ancient structures across the globe seem to suggest the possibility. From Stonehenge to the pyramids, from megalithic sites in Peru to the temples of Angkor, alignments to stars, pathways of energy, echoes of ancient science. Perhaps Bifröst is remembered because it was the most visible or the most poetic. Its collapse was not just the end of divine intervention, it was the end of shared memory. What survived was myth, symbol, in story. And in these fragments, we find clues. Shimmering lights in the sky, vibrating frequencies, guardians at thresholds, and bridges that burn with color and fire, all pointing to the idea that once something connected us with the divine, something real. And even now, the rainbow stirs that memory, a sudden arc of light after rain, unexpected, beautiful, evokes awe. It appears for a moment to bridge the earth and sky. And deep within us, something ancient stirs. Recognition, a story we've heard before, a bridge we once knew. This feeling, this intuition. Perhaps it is not imagination, but remembrance. The soul reaching for something it has seen before, long ago, when the worlds were still joined. Modern thinkers often dismiss myth as primitive storytelling. But what if myth is memory clothed in symbol? a message encoded to survive across cycles of destruction and renewal. What if Bifröst was never a metaphor, but a reality so profound that only myth could preserve it? And if so, then perhaps we have been walking beneath its ruins all this time, blind to its presence, waiting for the moment it will shimmer once more into view. Legends endure not just because they are fantastical, but because they speak to something universal, something that resonates across generations, across cultures. Bifröst is one of those legends. Its glow continues to reflect in our collective consciousness, as if it were a symbol not yet fully understood. The ancients may have lost the physical bridge, but the idea of it, the longing for it, never left. Perhaps that's the power of the myth. It acts as a placeholder for something real that once existed and might yet be rediscovered. If Bifröst was once a kind of Stargate, then it implies the existence of a civilization, either terrestrial or otherwise, that understood the manipulation of space, energy, and consciousness. Such a civilization would not have needed spacecraft in the traditional sense. Travel between realms would be instantaneous, a shift in frequency rather than location. This idea is echoed in esoteric traditions across the world. The teaching that higher realms are not distant in space, but hidden in vibration. The Norse were not an isolated people. Their tales found resonance in neighboring myths. The Celts spoke of bridges made of light. The Irish had their own rainbow paths. And the Sami people of the north believed in invisible roads through the air. Could all of these be fragmented memories of a once global knowledge? If Bifröst is symbolic of a shared technology, its story may be the Norse contribution to a much older narrative, a story whose origin lies before history, before time was recorded. But to truly grasp the bridge, one must explore not only where it led, but how it functioned. The fire surrounding Bifröst could have been a protective barrier, but it might also represent the activation process, a kind of ignition that flared with energy as the bridge stabilized. Light and fire are common motifs in describing forces humans cannot fully control. A portal of immense energy might appear like fire and feel like fire, even burn, if approached incorrectly. The myths warn of mortals being turned to ash if they dared the crossing uninvited. Perhaps the myths were more caution than allegory. And then there is the matter of Asgard, not merely a city of gold and divine halls, but a realm distinct from our own. The term guard suggests enclosure, protection, a place apart. It hovers above Midgard, yet remains unseen, unreachable by ordinary means. Was Asgard a separate dimension, a high-frequency zone, or even a construct in low Earth orbit? If such ideas sound strange, consider how modern satellites and space stations would appear to people 1,000 years ago. Floating lights, unreachable, inhabited by beings who control weather, send messages through the air, and vanish beyond the horizon. What we call science fiction today may simply be science remembered, and what we call mythology may be data encoded for survival. The Bifröst, viewed through this lens, becomes a beacon, a lost manual, a mythological breadcrumb, leading us back to an ancient truth. And perhaps, through understanding it, we come closer to understanding ourselves, our origin, and our forgotten potential. The rainbow bridge always shimmered after storms, as if its presence required disruption. Chaos, followed by order. Death, followed by revelation. This rhythm is eternal, echoed in the heartbeat of myth. The storm clears, and there it is, glowing across the sky, as if inviting us to remember something we once knew. Something that lies just beyond the veil. The colors of the rainbow are not arbitrary. Each one corresponds to a frequency of visible light, ordered from red to violet. But these frequencies continue beyond what the human eye can detect, into the infrared and ultraviolet, into realms we cannot see, but that still exist. Could Bifröst, then, be a path composed not only of color but of vibration extending into the unseen? A bridge that stretches across both the visible and invisible spectrums, aligning with layers of existence we can barely begin to perceive? In spiritual traditions, such as in yogic philosophy, these frequencies align with the body's energy centers, each chakra vibrating at a unique rate, represented by a specific color. The similarities are striking. Just as Bifröst connects worlds, the energy centers of the body connect the physical to the spiritual. If the rainbow bridge was more than just a cosmic highway, if it was also a template for inner ascension, then its destruction would not just be the loss of a bridge, but the collapse of inner harmony as well. Heimdall's role, then, becomes even more profound. As the guardian of Bifröst, he may not only be a gatekeeper between realms, but also a symbol of inner awareness, the heightened senses needed to perceive what lies beyond the ordinary. His ability to hear grass growing and see for hundreds of miles is exaggerated in myth, yes, but exaggeration often hints at truth. These are metaphors for expanded perception, the kind required to engage with higher realms. And what of those who tried to cross without permission? The myths speak of mortals who dared the path and were consumed. Perhaps this is not merely punishment, but consequence. To engage with such energy without preparation is to risk dissolution, just as one cannot approach a powerful electromagnetic field without protection. One cannot traverse Bifröst unprepared. Only those aligned in purpose and vibration may cross without harm. The fire, the color, the guardian, all serve to protect what lies on the other side. And perhaps what lies there is not just Asgard, but something more, a place of memory, of origin, of return. The Rainbow Bridge does not merely carry the gods, it connects consciousness. It links the story of the cosmos with the story of the soul. And in doing so, it reflects something greater, the path we each must take, inward and upward, toward something eternal. As we walk beneath real rainbows today, perhaps they are not just accidents of light and moisture, but echoes, reminders, faint traces of an ancient architecture that once spanned the worlds. An architecture now dormant, but not destroyed, hidden, perhaps, beneath mountains, encoded in stone, reflected in story, waiting for us to remember how to activate it once more. And when we do, when we find the right resonance, perhaps Bifröst will return. The idea that Bifröst could one day return is not merely hopeful fantasy. It is embedded within the mythic structure of Norse cosmology. After the destruction brought by Ragnarök, the sources speak of a reborn world, fresh, green, and vibrant. The surviving gods gather, the sun returns, and new humans rise from the sheltering woods. This rebirth is not chaotic. It is ordered. It suggests that even after collapse, the memory of the bridge and what it once connected remains etched into the structure of reality itself. This concept of cyclical renewal mirrors other ancient traditions. The Hindu yugas speak of vast epochs where knowledge is lost and regained. The Mayan calendar tracks great cycles of rise and fall. The Egyptians believed in Zep-Tepi, a first time when the gods walked the earth, and a hope that this golden age would return. All of these point to the idea that humanity once had access to something greater, something now obscured by time and forgetting. Perhaps Bifröst is not gone, merely dormant, like a Stargate that needs a specific harmonic to awaken. It may be waiting, and maybe its reactivation is not technological at all. Maybe it depends on consciousness, the alignment of the inner bridge before the outer one can open. Ancient texts speak of initiations, of ascension, of trials by fire and light. These rites may have been more than symbolic. They may have been the keys required to safely activate passageways to other worlds. This brings us to a deeper level of understanding, that Bifröst is not only a device or a structure, but a relationship, a bond between realms, yes, but also between levels of being. The bridge outside is a reflection of the bridge within, and its guardianship is not just Heimdall's role, but our own. Each person, in some way, is a watcher at the threshold of their own inner worlds, their own potential. In this way, Bifröst becomes a universal symbol, not just for the Norse, but for all of us. A rainbow that spans the chasm between the known and the unknown, between the mundane and the sacred, between memory and destiny. The myths preserve the outer form, but the inner essence waits in silence, pulsing beneath the surface of every story, every storm, every arc of color in the sky. And if, as some suggest, there were once advanced civilizations with access to interdimensional travel, then perhaps remnants of their bridges still linger in the unseen. Places where reality bends, where time slips, where strange lights appear. Sacred sites around the world may not be randomly located. They may be aligned to something forgotten or veiled. The remnants of a global network, broken but not beyond repair. The key, perhaps, lies in resonance. Just as Bifröst was said to shimmer and hum, so too do ancient stones resonate when struck. So too does the human voice enchant. So too does the heart in meditation. What if the bridge is waiting for us to remember not how to build it, but how to become attuned to it, to align with it, not with machines, but with presence, with memory, with sacred intent? There is an ancient intuition that the gods did not abandon us, but withdrew, waiting for a time when we might rise once more to meet them. In Norse myth, after Ragnarök, the new gods walk the earth, and light returns. The implication is that even after destruction, the knowledge and power of Bifröst are not lost forever. The blueprint may still exist, embedded in the fabric of space, and perhaps even in our DNA. Heimdall himself is said in some tales to be the father of humankind, born of 9 mothers, raised on the edge of the sea, possessing golden armor and heightened senses. These details have puzzled scholars for generations. 9 mothers, golden attributes, supernatural awareness. Could Heimdall be the symbolic offspring of a union between divine and terrestrial intelligences? Was he a hybrid being, one who could span both realms, who embodied the bridge he guarded? His origin, shrouded in enigma, may reflect a forgotten lineage, one in which humans were once more than they are now, attuned, aware, connected. Bifröst, in this view, is a legacy, an inheritance, one that was perhaps sealed away after misuse or catastrophe, and one that can be reclaimed only when we are ready. Myth then becomes not a record of what was, but a guide to what could be. As we trace the mythology deeper, another mystery emerges: the role of sound. The horn, Gjallarhorn, is not just a warning. It is the final note, the sound that pierces the realms and marks the transition between worlds. In many traditions, sound is the key to unlocking higher states, the Om of Hinduism, the chants of shamans, the trumpets of revelation. Sound is vibration, and vibration is the architecture of form. If Bifröst operated on frequencies, then Gjallarhorn may have been more than symbolic. It may have been a literal sonic device, calibrated to activate or dismantle dimensional gates. Its destructive note at Ragnarök may reflect not chaos, but a reset, a full collapse, clearing the way for a new cycle to begin. And this may be the reason Heimdall guards it so closely, because sound holds the power to shape or shatter worlds. From this perspective, even the Norse end times narrative takes on new meaning. Ragnarök is not merely doom, it is transition. It is the moment the bridge is overwhelmed, the connection severed, the cycle reset. But within the ashes lies the seed of renewal, a world reborn, skies cleared. Perhaps a new bridge forming, invisible at first, then glowing again with promise. And so we look to the rainbow not just as a weather phenomenon, but as a reminder, a coded memory, a symbol of a lost technology that once linked us to the stars, to higher consciousness, to the divine. Perhaps Bifröst never truly vanished. It simply waits for the right alignment, for the world to once again be ready to walk the burning path of light. The idea of readiness is central to many myths, not just Norse. There is a recurring theme across the ancient world. Only when humanity reaches a certain level of awareness or purity can it access higher knowledge or sacred spaces. The gates are there. The bridges are in place, but they remain closed to the unprepared. Bifröst, blazing with fire, shimmering with color, stands as both an invitation and a test. It challenges us to align ourselves not just technologically, but spiritually and mentally with its frequency. It may be that Bifröst is not a single structure, but a principle, a mode of connection that exists across time and space. Just as a radio can tune into a hidden station, perhaps the bridge appears when the conditions are right. The myths describe it not as something built, but as something that is, an ever-present arc that connects worlds until it is broken. This suggests it is natural, or at least semi-permanent, a part of the cosmic design, not merely a divine invention. In this sense, the bridge becomes a law of the universe, a mechanism by which realms communicate, by which beings traverse great divides. And perhaps what the Norse called Bifröst, others knew by different names. The concept of a hidden path, a sacred bridge, appears in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. It is the narrow road of the mystic, the wormhole of the physicist, the shimmering road of the visionary. Different words, same essence. The breakage of Bifröst, then, might not have been a single catastrophic event, but a slow forgetting, a gradual loss of resonance. As humanity descended into cycles of war, disconnection, and forgetfulness, the bridge dimmed, its colors faded from our minds, and now it appears only briefly, in the sky after rain, a shadow of what once was a living conduit between worlds. But what if Bifröst is more than memory? What if the clues left in the myths are instructions? If the bridge is based on resonance, frequency, and alignment, then perhaps we can reconstruct its principles. Not through metal and wire, but through understanding, through restoration of balance. Ancient initiates across many traditions practiced aligning their inner worlds before attempting contact with higher realms. Could these teachings be part of the same network that Bifröst belonged to? The ancients may have known that the bridge would be lost, and so they encoded its nature in story, in ritual, in symbol. The rainbow became a reminder, a flash of the old light, just long enough to stir memory. Heimdall stands eternal, not in flesh, but in concept, as the archetype of the watcher, the listener, the one who knows when the time is right. And the Gjallarhorn remains silent, waiting for the call that signals the threshold can once again be crossed. So how do we begin to approach Bifröst again? If it is both bridge and metaphor, both path and portal, where do we start? The myths offer hints. The first step may not be outward, but inward. The bridge between worlds begins as a bridge within. It starts with attuning ourselves to harmony, to balance, to the subtle energies that surround us. Just as a harp must be tuned to sing, so must the soul be brought into resonance. Many ancient cultures believed that sacred sites were placed on energy lines, what the Chinese call dragon lines, what others call ley lines. These sites often aligned with constellations, solstices, and planetary events. Was Bifröst anchored at such sites? Could it have emerged from places where Earth energy met celestial design? If so, then its echoes may still exist in these locations, dormant fields of power waiting to be reactivated. Stone circles, ancient temples, mountaintops once crowned with altars, these may be more than relics. They may be remnants of the Bifröst network, places where reality thinned, where the veil was once drawn back. Travelers and mystics have long reported strange sensations at such locations, as though space were not entirely stable, as though the air shimmered with hidden meaning. Perhaps these are not fantasies, but the final flickers of the rainbow bridge. Even the myths themselves are coded in ways that suggest deeper layers. The 9 realms of Norse cosmology may correspond to states of consciousness, levels of vibration, or even dimensions of reality. Midgard is our waking world, Asgard, the higher plane, and the others, realms of spirit, shadow, dream, and beyond. Bifröst is what links them. And if the realms are within us as much as without, then the bridge must be too. It may begin with memory, with story. By reading the old myths, meditating on their symbols, walking beneath rainbows not just as meteorological events, but as moments of connection. By honoring the ancient truths carried forward in whisper and symbol, perhaps that is how we draw the bridge near again, not through force or invention, but by remembering who we are and who we once were. And when enough remember, when enough are aligned, perhaps the shimmering path will begin to appear again. First in dreams, then in vision, then, one day, in the sky, not just after rain, but as an opening, a realignment, a return. Heimdall watches still. The horn has not yet sounded. The fire has not burned out. The bridge is waiting. Bifröst, as a concept, challenges the linear view of history. If such a bridge once existed not only as myth, but as mechanism, then our timeline may not be as straightforward as we think. Modern science views ancient cultures through the lens of primitive development. But what if we are the ones living in a dim echo, far removed from the heights once reached? The Rainbow Bridge, shining with impossible color, may be a remnant of that forgotten height, a glimmer of a golden age when the barriers between realms were thin and travel between them was real. The suggestion that Bifröst was part of an advanced system of interdimensional travel leads us to consider that our ancestors may have interacted with non-terrestrial intelligencers, even versions of humanity far more evolved than what we see today. In this view, the gods were not fictional, but real beings operating from higher planes or realities. And Bifröst was not only their pathway to our world, it was our invitation to theirs. If such a system ever existed, it must have required more than machines. The activation of Bifröst may have relied on the harmony between the environment, the energy grid of the earth, celestial alignments, and human consciousness, a technology woven into nature itself, one that could not be used recklessly, one that could only open when the rhythms of the cosmos and the soul were in sync. That's why Bifröst is guarded. That's why it trembles under misuse. That's why it breaks during Ragnarök, not out of failure, but because the harmony that sustains it has been lost. The fire giants crossing it represent dissonance, forces incompatible with the bridge's frequency, and once the balance is tipped, the bridge can no longer bear the strain. It falls, not as punishment, but as necessity. It protects the realms from full collapse by sacrificing itself. But the myth doesn't end there. It never does, because within every end is a new beginning. After the dust of Ragnarök settles, new seeds sprout, light returns. The sun's daughter rises in her mother's place, and somewhere, quietly, the potential of Bifröst begins to stir again. It is never truly gone, only waiting for the next cycle. This concept of cyclical destruction and rebirth is key. The ancient Norse were not nihilistic. They believed in endings, yes, but also in returns. Their cosmology is not a straight line, but a spiral. And if Bifröst was broken once before, it can be rebuilt. If not by gods, then by those who walk the path of remembrance. By those who hear the call, not through horns of brass, but through the resonance of ancient truth echoing deep within. To rebuild such a bridge, one does not need hammers or stone. one needs vision, a memory that transcends personal experience, a connection to something older, deeper, more luminous. In many traditions, including the Norse, the idea of memory is sacred. Odin gains wisdom not from books, but from sacrifice. He drinks from Mimir's well, a source of memory so deep it touches the roots of the cosmos. It is memory that grants vision, and it is vision that rekindles the bridge. Mimir's well lies at the base of Yggdrasil, the very tree that cradles the realms. It is said to be guarded and hidden, accessible only to those who have paid a great price. Perhaps this well is more than myth. Perhaps it is a representation of a memory field, an encoded archive of all things past and potential. If so, then Odin's sacrifice is a symbolic unlocking of the bridge between knowledge and being. He doesn't simply learn, he becomes. This is mirrored in Bifröst. One does not merely cross it, one must transform. Only the godsend, those deemed worthy, can walk upon it. The fire that surrounds it doesn't just protect, it purifies. Only those aligned in thought, frequency, and spirit may pass. This isn't elitism, it's energetic law. To move between realms is to leave behind dissonance, to align with the frequency of the destination. And this may be why the myths say mortals cannot cross Bifröst without divine aid. Not because they are weak, but because they are unprepared. The journey requires preparation, inner alchemy, and attunement to the sacred pattern. Those who have done the work, who have remembered the truth, are no longer simply mortals. They are travelers, carriers of resonance, builders of bridges. The ancient temples and texts may still hold pieces of this truth. Geometry that reflects cosmic order, sound that shapes form, rituals that echo forgotten technologies. If Bifröst was ever real, then traces of its design must remain in story, in symbol, in stone. And those traces can be reassembled not as replicas, but as resonant forms that lead us back to alignment. It is said that the rainbow is a bridge only visible under rare conditions: sunlight, moisture, angle, timing. Perhaps this is not coincidence. Perhaps Bifröst appears when all elements within and without come into harmony, when light meets water and bends, when consciousness meets memory and bends. Then, and only then, the arc appears. Then, the path opens. Then, the watcher awakens. Harmony, alignment, readiness. These are not abstract spiritual ideals in the context of Bifröst, but rather the fundamental conditions for access. In the modern world, we often speak of signal strength, bandwidth, and connectivity. Perhaps ancient civilizations, through different language, describe the same thing only in terms of energy, spirit, and vibration. Bifröst might have functioned in a manner very similar to a tuning device, one that could only stabilize when all frequencies matched the required signature. This leads to the possibility that the gods themselves were not inherently different in kind, but in frequency. They operated at a higher energetic state, allowing them to pass freely along Bifröst. Those rare humans who ascended or crossed the threshold in myths may have done so not by gaining permission, but by achieving resonance. These individuals were remembered as heroes, prophets, or demigods, Perhaps they were simply those who reactivated their connection to the greater pattern. In this sense, the path to the gods is not up in the sky, but inward through alignment with the bridge encoded within. Bifröst exists outside, yes, but also within, a mirrored path. The external rainbow bridge is a reflection of the internal arc, the bridge of awareness, consciousness, and spiritual evolution. That is why it appears only after storms. Not just meteorological storms, but storms within the soul, trials that cleanse and open the way forward. Asgard, then, becomes not only a realm above, but a state of being. The home of the gods may reside in another frequency band, a realm beyond the ordinary range of perception. In this model, the Stargate theory of Bifröst gains new depth. It is not a device in the mechanical sense, but a multidimensional interface, one that responds to intention, purity, balance, and timing. A cosmic aperture that opens only when all elements converge. Many sacred myths tell of such convergence points, moments when the veil between worlds thins, when the gods walk among mortals, when the bridge becomes visible once more. The Norse myths of Ragnarök describe not just destruction, but convergence, a return of forces that were long held apart, a final alignment before the reset. It's a pattern echoed in the flood myths, in the turning of yugas, in the dreams of prophecy. If Bifröst was real and if it still exists in dormant form, then it may yet return, not with spectacle, but with silence, subtle, glowing, vibrating at the edge of sight. And those with eyes to see, those who remember, may once again cross over. Not in body, perhaps, but in awareness. And through them, the bridge may light the skies again. The idea of crossing a vibrational threshold is not foreign to many spiritual disciplines. Shamans speak of spirit journeys, mystics of ascending realms, sages of opening the third eye. These teachings describe experiences that often include light, color, sound, and the feeling of movement across space, all elements associated with Bifröst. Could these inner experiences be recollections, or even partial crossings of the bridge? Echoes of a forgotten technology accessible through altered states? Bifröst, then, might function much like the pineal gland in the human brain, an ancient, mysterious organ associated with vision, sleep, and spiritual insight. Some have called it the seat of the soul, others the Stargate of the mind. If there is a bridge within, it might begin here. The point where internal light is seen, where consciousness expands, where the journey begins not with footsteps, but with stillness. In Norse cosmology, the realms are layered not only physically, but energetically. Some are worlds of mist and shadow, others of fire and light. Bifröst is said to stretch across them like a ribbon, reaching from Midgard to Asgard, but visible across the skies of all realms. It is the only path that unites them. This uniqueness further supports the idea that Bifröst was more than symbolism, was central to the structure of the cosmos itself. The gods used it not just to travel, but to maintain balance. Thor, protector of the realms, was said to use Bifröst often, yet it trembled under his weight. Not because of literal heaviness, but because of what he carried: power, lightning, force. Perhaps certain kinds of energy threatened the stability of the bridge, suggesting it was sensitive, reactive, even conscious. It could sense misuse. It could reject those not in alignment. This sensitivity echoes how sacred technologies are described in many ancient traditions. Devices or tools that respond not only to physical interaction but to emotional and spiritual states. Technologies that require intent, purity, focus. Perhaps Bifröst was such a tool, a living bridge, aware of who approached and who was permitted to cross. Even its colors, often described as flames of red, gold, and blue, may point to specific energetic qualities. In modern energy healing systems, red relates to grounding and will, gold to divine intelligence, blue to truth and clarity. The bridge, glowing with these energies, may have functioned as a kind of initiatory path, requiring the traveler to pass through various frequencies before reaching Asgard. And Asgard, shining, eternal, unreachable by ordinary means, waits not in the sky, but in a higher state of being. The journey across Bifröst, then, becomes the journey of the soul, through color, sound, fire, and memory. It walks the path to what was lost. Not only to find the gods, but to remember that we once walked beside them. In the hushed silence of early dawn, when the world is still and the air is thick with unseen currents, it's as if the ancient energies that once powered Bifröst still ripple just beneath reality. Places once sacred to forgotten peoples sometimes hum with these hidden forces. A sensation felt more than seen. Could these be residual frequencies? Echoes of a system once vibrant, now dormant. Many have reported such feelings at ancient megalithic sites, at the edge of mountains, or deep within forest glades. Perhaps these were once entry points, or markers of alignment, once part of a vast, interconnected network. If Bifröst was real, then it may have had counterparts across the world, other bridges, other portals, each one tailored to the culture and energy of its land. In the Vedic traditions, the gods traveled by beams of light. In the Mayan world, stairways of stars connect heaven and earth. The Dogon of Mali describe gateways aligned with Sirius, while the Aboriginal Dreamtime speaks of rainbow paths walked by ancestors before time began. These are not isolated ideas. They form a web of belief, one that may be rooted in a forgotten reality. So, we ask again, could Bifröst have been part of a global system of stargates? If so, were these gates powered by earth energies, by consciousness, by something else entirely? The myths give us symbols, but not blueprints. Yet, sometimes, symbols are more powerful. They unlock the imagination and the memory that dwells deep within it. The arc of the rainbow, for instance, appears in sacred geometry, crop circles, even particle collisions. The curve is a natural constant, an echo of perfection. And within that curve lies a hidden code. Light split through water reveals the full spectrum, but beyond it lies more. Ultraviolet, infrared, bands of vibration invisible to us, but just as real. Perhaps Bifröst operated within those bands, seen only by those who could tune into the forgotten frequencies. Not unlike a radio signal passing through the air unheard until the right receiver is present. This view reshapes how we see the ancient gods. not as bearded deities seated in halls of gold, but as beings in tune with the harmonic structure of reality, masters of frequency, travelers of resonance. And we, as children of their legacy, carry the dormant ability to do the same. The path of the bridge is, ultimately, a path of return to the stars, to awareness, to the memory of who we truly are. And if Bifröst was once crossed not with feet but with the soul, then it is still there, waiting, hidden in plain sight, shimmering just behind the veil, a living memory, one that returns with each rainbow in the sky, each story passed in whispers, each dream where we fly between stars. Heimdall may not be a figure of the past. He may live in the pattern itself, the part of us that watches, that listens, that remembers the call. The myth of Heimdall carries within it more than guardianship. It holds the principle of readiness. He is ever awake, ever alert, never faltering in his watch. This is no ordinary vigilance. It is metaphysical awareness. Heimdall's presence at the bridge suggests that one cannot cross Bifröst without also crossing a personal threshold. He represents the inner sentinel, the voice that asks, "Are you ready?" Not with judgment, but with honesty. For the bridge does not shows what we are, not what we pretend to be. In this way, Heimdall becomes more than myth. He is a symbol of initiation. He stands at the threshold, not to forbid, but to prepare. In ancient rites, the initiate was often tested before being allowed into the inner sanctum. Trials of courage, wisdom, and endurance. Perhaps the gods themselves underwent such trials before first crossing the burning path. Perhaps Bifröst is not just a connection, but a crucible. And the flames that surround it are not flames of destruction, but of transformation. Fire in mythology is rarely simply fire. It is knowledge, change, purification. Prometheus gave fire to man, igniting civilization. The phoenix is reborn in flames. The burning rainbow may signify that no one crosses unchanged. Bifröst transforms all who enter it. Even the gods approach it with reverence. The question then arises, if Bifröst transforms, what is on the other side? The myths tell us Asgard awaits. But what is Asgard really? A city of golden halls? Or a state of being beyond our current comprehension? In some accounts, Asgard is described not as a fixed place, but as a shining realm whose light can be seen even from Midgard, though only by the wise. This implies perception, not location, defines access. The closer one aligns with divine principles, the nearer Asgard becomes, and the brighter the bridge glows. It is not distance that separates the worlds, but dissonance. To reach Asgard is to remember harmony, to move in tune with the cosmic rhythm, and thus Bifröst appears not as a destination, but as a process, a dance between frequencies, a song whose notes must be rediscovered. In that sense, the bridge has never vanished. It only faded from view when the song was forgotten, when we stopped listening. But the melody is still there, carried in myth, in color, in the longing we feel when looking up at a rainbow. It is the call of the bridge, and perhaps the soul's deepest desire. Bifröst is not just about gods and realms. It is about us. It is about return. A return not only to connection with the divine, but to wholeness within ourselves, a path walked with light, remembered in fire, guarded by silence, and revealed only to those who are truly ready to see. If readiness is the key, then the reawakening of Bifröst lies not in discovery, but in remembrance, a quiet reassembly of ancient truths scattered like stardust across myths, symbols, dreams. In the stillness of night, when the world sleeps and the mind drifts freely, some feel they walk a path of light, a shimmering arc they cannot name. Could these be visits to the bridge itself? Glimpses of Bifröst through the cracks in waking perception? Dreams have long been regarded as gateways in ancient thought, doors through which the soul can travel. In Norse tradition, the seer could journey across the 9 realms while entranced. The bridge, in this view, is not only a cosmic mechanism, but a vessel of the mind, a mirrored rainbow between consciousness and eternity. Bifröst may be just as accessible through vision and meditation as it ever was through mythical travel. Modern science speaks of dimensional layers, of membranes and hidden universes coexisting with our own. Theoretical physics introduces the idea that reality is much more vast and complex than the 5 senses allow. In this expanding field of possibility, the idea of a bridge between realms no longer sounds like fantasy. It begins to sound like forgotten science, a science clothed in story, protected by metaphor, waiting for its moment to return. And as we consider this return, the role of humanity becomes central. Are we passive observers of these myths, or participants in a much larger unfolding? If Bifröst can be reawakened, it may require not only belief, but co-creation. The ancients may have left us the key, but we must be the ones to turn it. Not by building machines, necessarily, but by aligning ours individually and collectively with the sacred frequencies that allow the bridge to appear. This could explain why Bifröst collapsed in the first place, not because it was attacked or destroyed, but because the collective resonance of humanity shifted out of harmony. In such a state, the bridge could no longer sustain itself. But this is not the end of the story, because harmony can be restored, frequencies can be retuned, and if enough begin to remember, to realign, then perhaps the bridge will begin to flicker back into being. It may begin subtly, strange sensations at ancient sites, collective dreams, sudden synchronicities, colors more vivid, rainbows that linger longer than they should, feelings of connection beyond words. These may be the signs that Bifröst stirs once more, not with spectacle or grandeur, but with a quiet unfolding, a breath drawn in by the universe, preparing to release something long held. The gods may not return on chariots of fire. They may return in silence through the bridge, through us. For perhaps we are not separate from them at all. Perhaps we are their descendants, their messengers, their memory. If we are indeed the inheritors of a forgotten legacy, then the story of Bifröst becomes something personal, not just a tale of gods and giants, but a mirror of our own inner path. Each challenge we face, each inner storm we endure, becomes part of the process of reconnection. Like the sky after rainfall, the rainbow does not emerge unless light passes through transformation. And neither does the bridge, unless we pass through our own trials with clarity and openness. The burning arc of Bifröst is a path that tests and reveals. The fire purifies, the colors align, the soul is reshaped. In this sense, every person walking the path of awakening may be walking a piece of that bridge, becoming a living segment of its light. Perhaps Bifröst is not a single road, but a web of consciousness, activated by intention, forming when minds and hearts reach out across the divide. This makes every sacred act meaningful. Meditation, kindness, song, truth-telling, all vibrational expressions, all ways to realign. The ancient world understood this not as philosophy, but as practice. Rituals weren't empty gestures, they were frequency management. Offerings to gods weren't just tribute, they were ways to open the channel. Maybe Bifröst appeared during sacred rites for a reason, because those rites called it forth. And if we view the world today through that lens, we may begin to understand the long silence. A world out of tune produces no bridge. A humanity asleep cannot summon the path. But even now, something stirs. People are remembering. The myths are being read again, not as fiction, but as fragments of something greater. A code that speaks to the heart more than the intellect. And each awakening is a flare of light, a color added to the arc. Heimdall watches. He always has. Not in the sky, but within the pattern, within us. The guardian is not only external, it is the inner voice that says, wait, listen, prepare. Not yet. Now. It is the one that sees before seeing, hears before sound. And when the moment comes, when the final frequency is reached, perhaps the Gjallarhorn will sound not as doom, but as signal. A sound not of collapse, but of return. Return to the bridge. Return to the light. Return to a world where the sky is not a ceiling, but a gateway, a path that shimmers not just above, but through, a rainbow that is not only color, but memory, intention, and promise. Bifröst was never just a bridge. It was a vow, a bond between realms, and between who we are, and who we were always meant to become. To understand Bifröst is to walk along a trail of light and shadow, through ancient echoes and future calls. It is to stand at the edge of what is known and feel the pull of what once was, and what might be again. If the bridge is truly a Stargate, then it must operate not just across space, but across time. Myths don't just remember, they resonate forward. Bifröst is not only a memory of the past, but a pathway to potential futures, seen through the prism of human imagination and divine origin. It's important to ask, why a rainbow? Why not a golden road or a ladder of stars? The answer may lie in what the rainbow represents universally, a meeting of opposites, rain and sun, light and water, earth and sky, a moment when duality blends into unity. Perhaps Bifröst is not just about traveling from one realm to another, but about merging realms, unifying layers of self, space, and soul into a single harmonic field. Ancient initiates may have known this truth and encoded it in rites of passage. Some believed that walking the path of the rainbow was the final test before transcendence. Not physical death, but symbolic dissolution, the ego falling away, the essence passing through fire and frequency until it emerged aligned with higher purpose. In this sense, Bifröst is as much an inward collapse and reformation as it is outward movement. It is the crucible through which transformation becomes possible. Many have tried to trace where Bifröst might have touched the earth. Some believe the aurora borealis inspired its glow. Others point to natural arches or high mountain passes where rainbows stretch across vast valleys. But perhaps its traces lie not in any one location, but in a networking invisible grid across the planet, once used to connect sacred sites and consciousness points. If Bifröst operated as part of this grid, then its echoes may still pulse quietly through the earth, waiting to be felt. Certain locations are said to call to people, often without explanation, a pull toward the ancient, toward stillness, toward mystery. Perhaps these places still hum with fragments of the old light. Perhaps the bridge never ended there. It simply passed through. And in those moments of silent connection, when the wind carries whispers and colors flash at the edge of vision, we may be closer to the bridge than we think. Heimdall, the guardian, may not stand in front of a physical gate anymore, but the archetype persists. He is the watcher at the threshold of consciousness, the still point in the storm, the moment before awakening. He is the part of us that never forgets the way home, that remembers the shimmer, the arc, the promise. And maybe, just maybe, when enough of us remember too, the light of Bifröst will begin to gather once more. There are stories, ancient and scattered, of those who vanished in light, heroes who walked into beams from the heavens, shamans who climbed ladders of fire, sages who disappeared through arcs in the sky. Were these symbolic deaths, or did they point to something else? Could they be vestiges of real experience moments when the bridge appeared, however briefly, and carried someone across? If Bifröst was part of a living system once known and practiced, then perhaps these disappearances were not departures but arrivals, transitions to higher realms, crossings through resonance. The myths remember them because they marked something important, a successful traversal, a rare alignment. And though they are often cloaked in poetic language, there is a consistency across cultures that suggests more than fantasy. This leads us to the possibility that Bifröst still activates but selectively, not under command, but in response to readiness. When an individual, place, or even a moment reaches the right frequency, the bridge responds. It shines for a heartbeat, allowing passage not through steps, but through awareness. It may not even require movement, only transformation. And those who return often speak of timelessness, light, and a sense of having touched something vast and eternal. Science, slowly and cautiously, begins to echo the language of myth. Theoretical physicists speak of wormholes, quantum entanglement, dimensional folding. What if Bifröst was a stabilized form of these phenomena? What if ancient cultures developed or inherited a means to engage with the fabric of reality directly, not through brute force, but through harmony, through symbol, through sound? Sound especially returns again and again. The horn of Heimdall, the resonance of chants, the tonal geometry found in sacred architecture. If Bifröst responds to frequency, then perhaps the entire cosmos is built not on mass and motion, but on vibration. The myths knew this without equations. They sang the truth that we now calculate. That light is song. That structure is rhythm. that to walk the bridge is to harmonize with creation itself. And what of those who cannot see the bridge? Perhaps they are not blind, but simply misaligned. The world today is loud, chaotic, dissonant. In such noise, the subtle hum of Bifröst becomes inaudible. But when the mind stills, when intention aligns, when the heart becomes quiet, the shimmer begins. A glow at the edge of perception, a feeling of vastness pressing close. It is then that the traveler begins to feel it. The bridge, not a construction, but a call. Not a place, but a path. Not made by hands, but by memory. And in that moment, the traveler does not go anywhere. Instead, they become the bridge, pulsing with color, wrapped in fire, aligned with stars, a point of connection between realms, a living arc of promise. Bifröst is not outside us. It is what we are when we remember who we have always been. To become the bridge is to step into a role far greater than that of the seeker. It is to embody the path itself. The traveler ceases to be separate from the destination. There is no longer here and there, only flow. This is the essence of Bifröst, not a passage between 2 points, but a state of being in which duality dissolves. The Rainbow Bridge is not just between Midgard and Asgard. It is between fear and trust, between forgetting and remembering, between sleep and awakening. In the old myths, Bifröst is never built, it simply is. It exists as a fundamental truth of the cosmos, like gravity or light. It appears when needed and fades when misused. This detail is crucial. Bifröst doesn't respond to control, only to harmony. One cannot summon it with force, but with resonance. It is not a tool to be mastered, but a mystery to be honored. And so the role of the guardian becomes clearer. Heimdall is not just protector of a physical gate, but steward of vibrational integrity. He ensures that what crosses is worthy not by judgment, but by resonance. If the frequency does not match, the bridge will not appear. If the soul is not prepared, the fire will burn. This is why the myths speak of it breaking under strain. The system is self-regulating, divine in design, protected by its very nature. But the gods themselves knew this. They respected Bifröst. Even Thor, with his unmatched strength, tread upon it cautiously. The gods knew that the bridge was not theirs, it was older, part of the fabric of the worlds themselves. Perhaps it was gifted to them, or perhaps they discovered it, as those before them had. In this sense, Bifröst may be a universal constant available to any who reach the right awareness. That awareness does not arise through technology alone. No machine, however advanced, can replace the inner alignment needed. The ancient mysteries often required both the outer form and the inner readiness. Sacred geometry, mantras, rituals, and meditations were all tools to help tune the initiate. Bifröst was not a shortcut. It was a culmination. And so, when we look at the myths not as superstition but as memory, the bridge reveals itself. It is encoded in architecture, myth, language, and light. Its arc crosses not just the sky, but every tradition that remembers ascent, from the Egyptian ladder of light to the Tibetan rainbow body, from the Celtic silver road to the Inca bridge of the sun. The pattern is the same. The bridge is one. Perhaps what we call Bifröst is but one name for the same eternal connection. And by learning to recognize it in all its forms, we come closer to restoring it not in a distant future, but within the moment we are ready to walk its path. The restoration of Bifröst is not a task given to a chosen few. It is an invitation extended to all. Every person, in their quiet moments of wonder, has touched its edge. Every child who gazes at a rainbow and feels something stir, every artist who paints arcs of light from unknown memory, every dreamer who feels they've traveled far while their body lay sleeping, they are all walking toward the bridge. The ancient Norse may not have had the language of quantum fields or multidimensional layers, but they had poetry, and poetry is the language of the soul capable of holding truths that cannot be spoken directly. The myths, then, are not childish tales, but encoded wisdom. The fires surrounding Bifröst, the watchful eye of Heimdall, the sound of the hornel are symbols of a sacred system once known intimately and now remembered only in part. Modern minds tend to dissect stories, searching for hidden meaning with logic and analysis. But Bifröst does not yield to dissection. It opens only through experience. It shines when we feel rather than understand, when we listen rather than speak, when we tune in rather than reach out. It is not an equation, it is a harmony, a living rhythm waiting to be remembered. That rhythm still pulses through the earth. It hums in the stones of forgotten temples, in the silence of ancient forests, in the wind atop the world's high peaks. In these places, many have felt a presence, a lightness, a resonance. Some call them sacred sites, others energy vortices, but perhaps they are just thresholds, points where the bridge once passed, or still does. Even the sky speaks of it. Rainbows, yes, but also halos, sundogs, auroras, strange lights that appear in remote places, sightings of luminous arcs that bend and shimmer without explanation. The scientific explanations are real, but they are not the whole story. Perhaps these events are not just natural, but invitations, glimpses of a system reactivating, responding, calling, and in response, something ancient begins to awaken in us. A memory older than words, a longing, not for escape, but for return, to walk again in the footsteps of those who once crossed between the realms, not as gods, but as humans who remembered they were more than flesh, who remembered that they were once the bridge, and still are. Heimdall's gaze remains fixed not on the sky, but on the heart. The horn remains silent not because the end is far, but because the beginning is near. The fire still burns, not to destroy, but to refine. And the arc, that trembling shimmer, is closer now than it has been in a long, long time. In many traditions, there is a belief that sacred truths reveal themselves in layers. The outer layer is story, the middle is symbol, the inner is experience. Bifröst follows this pattern perfectly. At first glance, it's a tale of gods crossing a glowing bridge. But behind the color and flame lies a symbol of something far deeper, a template, an invitation, a path. As we peel back those layers, we begin to sense that Bifröst is not just a story told by the Norse. It is a remembrance held by the human spirit itself. A whisper from a time when light was not separate from sound, when color was not just seen, but felt, and when travel between realms was not science fiction, but sacred fact. Something we once knew, and may yet know again. The breaking of the bridge at Ragnarök, then, may not only be the story of an ending, but a warning about imbalance. A system once perfect becomes unstable not through malice, but through misalignment. A frequency disrupted, a harmony lost. Perhaps it is a cosmic reminder systems built on resonance require care. The bridge breaks not to punish, but to reset, to protect what lies beyond, to give us time to remember how to approach again, properly aligned. The burning colors of Bifröst aren't simply visual beauty. In many energy-based traditions, color corresponds to vibrational states. Red grounds, blue speaks truth, gold radiates wisdom. If the bridge contained all these, it may have been more than a roadway. It may have been a calibration chamber. Each step across Bifröst would refine the traveler, burning away dissonance, attuning them to the realm they sought to enter. This aligns with the idea that true travel across realms isn't about physical distance. It's about energetic transformation. One must become the frequency of the destination. In this light, Bifröst becomes not just a connection between Midgard and Asgard, but a rite of passage. The journey shapes the traveler. The fire purifies. The colors tune. And what steps off the other side is not the same as what began the walk. Perhaps that is why only certain beings could cross freely. The gods, by nature, existed in states aligned with the bridge. Others needed guidance, guardianship, transformation. The myths aren't gatekeeping, they're guidance. They teach that the path to higher realms is available, but sacred. It must be earned through remembrance, through resonance, through realignment. If Bifröst is to return in any form, it will not come with noise and spectacle, but with silence and alignment. It will arrive like the dawn, gradually, steadily, and full of color. Already, some say, it has begun. In dreams, in meditations, in the spaces between thoughts, the bridge flickers at the edge of vision. Not because it is shy, but because we are still remembering how to see. And what do we see when it does appear? A path of light? A road through fire? Or something deeper? A realization that we are not separate from the bridge, that the structure of the cosmos is mirrored within us, that our thoughts, emotions, and intentions shape the frequency of our being. When aligned, we resonate with the bridge. And in that resonance, we walk. Many ancient cultures taught that sacred travel was always a return not to a place, but to a state. The rainbow was never meant to lead us somewhere new. It was always pointing back to what we forgot. A state of harmony, of wholeness, of divinity. To walk Bifröst is to walk home not to Asgard alone, but to the self we once were before the forgetting. Perhaps that is why the bridge breaks in the myths. To protect that memory, to ensure that only those who truly remember can find their way back. And as more awaken, the bridge repairs itself. Each aligned heart becomes a beam of color. Each act of remembrance, a spark of fire. And slowly the arc begins to shine again. The end of the world is not destruction, it is transformation. Ragnarök means the twilight of the gods, but also the dawning of what comes next. A new age, a new connection. And in that age, Bifröst glows again, not as a relic, but as a promise fulfilled, a living link burning with the light of awakened consciousness. We stand now in the time between, the misty morning before the rainbow reappears, the quiet before the horn sounds. But already, the signs are here, in the stories we tell, in the truths we feel, in the longing that rises when we see the arc of color after rain. Bifröst is near, not in the sky above, but in the space within, waiting, remembering, becoming. There is a stillness that surrounds sacred truths, a pause in the air when something deep is remembered, as if the world itself leans closer, waiting. This is the feeling that comes when we speak of Bifröst, not as myth, but as memory, something ancient and luminous that once was, and perhaps still is, hidden behind layers of forgetting. If the bridge is returning, it will do so quietly, through us, through the waking of memory in those who still believe the stories carried more than fable. The shimmering arc that spans the sky after rain is a clue, a living symbol, not crafted by hands, but by nature's own design. It speaks of light bending through water, of transformation, of beauty emerging from storm. Bifröst mirrors this perfectly. It is the path revealed after trials, the road that appears only when conditions align. In myth, it is surrounded by fire, but fire too is a purifier, a revealer, and the bridge is always described as glowing, trembling, alive. The trembling is important. It implies sensitivity. The bridge reacts. It responds to frequency, to force, to imbalance. In the tales, it can be overloaded, destroyed. Not unlike how advanced systems today fail when pushed beyond capacity, this alone points to Bifröst as more than dream, but as a dynamic structure capable of great power and also great fragility. And yet, it is never fully lost. Even after Ragnarök, the bridge is remembered. A new world rises, and though the myths do not always say it directly, Bifröst feels present in that renewal. Perhaps not rebuilt by the gods, but remembered by those who carry the flame forward. Just as the sun's daughter rises to take her mother's place, so too may the next bridge rise not identical to the old, but born from its memory. This is not just poetic, this is archetypal. All great cycles end and begin with transition. A gate closes, another opens, and through it walks the next bearer of light. We are those bearers, not passive watchers of an ancient story, but living participants in its unfolding. Each of us is a potential spark, a strand of the arc. As we align with truth, we do not walk the bridge, we become it. This shift from seeker to embodiment is the final step, to stop reaching and start radiating. The fire of Bifröst is not just around use, it is within us. And when we awaken to that fire, the colors come. The bridge lights up. The memory returns. And now we stand on the threshold not of destruction, but of remembrance. The ark is not just behind us in story, or ahead of us in hope. It is beneath our feet, even now. Every choice we make, every moment we pause to feel wonder, every time we act from stillness instead of noise, we are stepping upon the bridge. We are walking the invisible light. This is what the ancients may have truly meant, that the bridge is not a place but a process, a transformation. When a person aligns their life their thoughts, their emotions to the higher pattern, they shift. They become luminous. They become a channel between worlds, and that is the crossing. That is Bifröst, active again. No machine may be required, no structure of stone or metal, only resonance, only intention, only purity. And these are things we can cultivate, even now. The guardianship Heimdall offers is something we all carry, that inner watchman who knows when we are ready, that inner voice that guides us back to alignment when the world pulls us into dissonance. The horn sounds not from a tower but from within, and when the time comes, it will not be loud. The return of Bifröst will be quiet. It will shimmer into awareness one heart at a time, and suddenly we will realize we are already walking it. We have been all along. Every act of love, every word spoken in truth, every breath held in reverence. It is all a step on the bridge. The light gathers. The fire purifies. The rainbow burns within. The myths tell us what science is only beginning to rediscover, that consciousness is not limited to flesh, that space and time are pliable, that reality responds to frequency. In this model, Bifröst is not a bridge between places, but between states, between sleeping and awakening, between forgetting and remembering, between the fragmented self and the whole. And at the end of that bridge, or perhaps at its center, is Asgard. Not as a distant city, but as a state of divine presence. A harmony so complete, so clear, that all illusions dissolve. To reach it is not to leave the world, but to see it as it truly is. Whole, sacred, alive. The fire still burns. The colors still shimmer. The bridge still waits. And we are readying ourselves to return. As we approach the final arc of this exploration, the image of Bifröst becomes more than a relic of mythid, becomes a revelation, a symbol of what is possible when we remember who we are. The Rainbow Bridge, once thought to connect gods and mortals, becomes the luminous thread that runs through the heart of all spiritual awakening. It is the link between dimensions, between lives, between past and future selves. There is a reason why the bridge glows with color, why it burns with fire, why it trembles under great weight. Each of these symbols is alive. Color as frequency, fire as purification, trembling as resonance. Together, they describe a technology not built with hands, but with harmony. A system that responds not to command, but to coherence. One that cannot be forced, but must be remembered, felt, aligned with. And this alignment does not require ancient bloodlines or mystical lineage. It requires only awareness, the willingness to slow down, to listen, to feel. When the stories of old say that only gods could walk Bifröst, perhaps they meant those who had attained clarity, those whose inner worlds no longer pulled against themselves, beings who walked without fear because their path was lit from within. This is a concept that resonates across time. In traditions far from Norse lands, we find the same message. The path to the divine is walked by the transformed. Those who rise not by conquest, but by calibration. The Egyptians' journey through the underworld, the Tibetan rainbow body, the Christian transfiguration. All speak of radiant transformation, and all suggest a bridge, a means by which the soul returns to its source. Bifröst, then, may be the shared memory of that return. The reason it appears in the sky after rain is not coincidence. It is a lesson. Storms will come, chaos will pass, and from it, the bridge will rise again. Its beauty born from contrast, its colors born from light, refracted through tear and mist. It is not a promise of escape, but of reconnection. And each time we see it, we feel something move within us, something ancient, a longing not just for wonder, but for home. Not in a physical sense, but in the sense of belonging to a pattern greater than ourselves. The bridge reminds us we are not lost, that the connection has never truly been broken, only hidden, only waiting. In many ways, the myth of Bifröst is the myth of the soul's journey. We come into this world through veils of forgetfulness, carried by light into form. And for a time, we forget. We grow. We struggle. We seek. But always, beneath it all, there is the shimmer, a memory, a glint at the edge of perception that says, there is more. Something beautiful, burning, just beyond the veil. That shimmer is Bifröst, not the bridge of the gods alone, but the bridge of memory, the path we all must walk if we are to return to what we truly are. The stories have preserved it. The skies have mirrored it, and now, perhaps, the soul begins to reach for it once more. Heimdall's horn has not yet sounded, but perhaps we have begun to hear its echo. A low hum beneath the noise of the world. A tone that rises when we are still, when we gaze at stars, when we remember stories told in childhood, not just for entertainment, but to seed something within us, something that waits and grows. The end of the world, as the Norse called it, Ragnarök, was never about destruction alone. It was about cleansing, renewal, revelation. And the breaking of the bridge was not the final blow, but the sign that something new was coming. Something that required the old paths to collapse so that new ones could emerge. The bridge breaks, so it can be reborn, so it can return stronger, clearer, radiant, not with force, but with light remembered. And perhaps that is where we are now. In the space between collapse and creation, the moment between silence and sound, the shimmer just before the full arc appears. If so, then we are not lost. We are in the middle of the path, and the bridge, once forgotten, begins to glow again, not because the gods rebuild it, but because we do. Every act of love, every choice aligned with truth, every story passed on with reverence, every rainbow honored with quiet awe, these are the stones of the bridge, laid not in the sky, but in the soul. And slowly, they form the arc, fire-colored, vibrating, alive. The bridge returns not to lead us away, but to lead us home, home to self, home to purpose, home to the stars that sang us into being. And when we are ready, when we remember the song, we will walk Bifröst once more. There's something profoundly humbling about standing beneath a rainbow, knowing it exists not in one place, but in every place, not fixed in the sky, but projected through perspective. Bifröst, too, may be just like that, anchored not to geography, but to consciousness. It is not a fixed location on a map, but an experience, a manifestation of alignment between inner and outer worlds, And perhaps this is why it has always eluded those who seek it with only the mind. The bridge is not found through intellect alone, but through attunement. Like a note struck perfectly in tune with the cosmos, Bifröst appears only when all layers of being mental, emotional, spiritual, resonate as one. It cannot be hunted. It can only be harmonized with. In this way, the myths were more than ancient science fiction. They were roadmaps. Encoded within their verses were the instructions for preparing oneself to walk the bridge. Courage like Thor, wisdom like Odin, vigilance like Heimdall. These were not mere attributes of gods, but archetypes of qualities within us all. Bifröst was not reserved for the divine. It was the result of embodying the divine within. The tales also spoke of Bifröst's fragility. It was strong, yet vulnerable. It could bear the weight of gods, yet shatter under the assault of giants. This was a warning, not only about external threats, but about the internal ones. Dissonance, greed, rage, fear. These frequencies do not merely cloud the soul, they destabilize the bridge. And when enough discord moves through the system, the arc falters. Perhaps this is why it fell at Ragnarök. Not because the gods failed, but because the worlds did. The harmony between realms broke down, and the bridge being pure harmony could no longer hold. It shattered not out of weakness, but out of loyalty to its own nature. But Bifröst was never gone, just waiting for the song to return, for the colors to realign, for the children of the storm to remember the fire of the ark. We are those children. And though the world feels loud and fractured, we are beginning to hear again the still music of the bridge. Now we begin to see the full shape of the ark, not just as light in the sky, but as a cycle of remembering, a loop of myth, memory, and reawakening that speaks not just to the Norse, but to all humanity. Bifröst is not a relicit, is a living system, encoded into the very structure of the cosmos and mirrored within us. This bridge, once walked by gods, now waits for humanity to become more than myth's audience. It calls us to become the next tellers, the next walkers, the next builders, not by imitating the past, but by embodying its wisdom in new ways, here, now, in a world in need of connection more than ever. Bifröst is not a technology of escape, it is a frequency of integration. And when we speak of stargates, of bridges between worlds, perhaps we are not imagining the future, but remembering the foundation, that consciousness is not bound by bone, that spirit is not limited by stars. That movement across time, space, and reality is possible when one walks in alignment with truth. Heimdall's horn, still silent in the myths, may not be waiting for doom but for resonance, for the moment when the collective heart sings clearly enough to echo across realms. That note will not bring an end, but a beginning, a return not just to divine contact, but to divine embodiment. The myths gave us pictures to hold, images that lived even when knowledge faded. And those pictures now glow again, a rainbow after rain, a shimmer in meditation, a knowing glance between souls. These are fragments of the bridge returning. And with each alignment, each act of grace, each moment of quiet remembrance, we repair the path. We lay its stones in silence. We light its fire from within. We become the travelers who do not wait for the bridge to appear, but who carry it with us everywhere. The arc is rising. The fire is remembering. The path is clear. And soon, perhaps, we will cross it not as wanderers, but as the ones who finally remembered how to come home. To stand on the threshold of Bifröst is to stand at the boundary of worlds, not just between realms of myth and matter, but between the self we've known and the self we've forgotten. The bridge is not just a road to Asgard. It is the path back to the wholeness that existed before separation, before doubt, before dissonance. This is why the bridge is sacred, because it's not about reaching a place, but about returning to a state, one where the divine and the human are not two things but one, remembered. In this state, movement is no longer limited to steps. One crosses not with the body, but with being. And now, as the myths find new life in our imaginations, Bifröst glows again not with fire, but with recognition. The bridge is forming not in the sky, but in our stories, our art, our dreams. Across the world, people are waking up with the sense that something is calling them, a directionless longing, a gentle urgency, a shimmer at the edge of the soul. That shimmer is the call of the bridge, and though we may not see it with our eyes yet, we can feel its presence when we quiet our minds, when we sit beneath a tree and feel the wind carry a whisper older than language, when we speak truth and the air seems to still in recognition, when we close our eyes and see colors that feel like home. These are signs that the Rainbow Road is remembering us too. We are part of its return, not just observers, but activators. When we live in alignment, we tune ourselves like instruments, and when enough of us resonate, the song becomes strong enough to shape light. The bridge appears, and when it does, it will not be an arrival. It will be a remembering. The final moments of myth are not about endings, but openings. The collapse of Bifröst in the old tales was never the death of a dream, it was the pause before rebirth. Ragnarök was not a fall into darkness. It was the pruning of a great tree before its new bloom. And in that space, in that silence, the next bridge waits. Its structure is no longer made of fire alone. It is made of story, of silence, of memory, of choice. Each of us adds to it with our lives, our healing, our courage to see the world not as it appears but as it could be. We are not waiting for gods to return. We are learning that we always carried their spark. In that light, Bifröst becomes more than a connection between placet, becomes the scaffolding of a new reality, one where myth and science no longer compete but complement, where the knowledge of the stars meets the wisdom of the soul, where the arc of color is also an arc of meaning. Perhaps that is the secret hidden in every rainbow, that it isn't just light refracted but truth revealed, a mirror of what exists within, a sign that even in a world clouded with storms, light still finds a way through, and where light bends, bridges form. This understanding brings a quiet peace, the kind that doesn't need proof, only presence, the kind that doesn't rush toward answers, but walks gently in mystery. Because Bifröst is not a thing to possess, it is a grace to live. And we are already living it. With every moment we choose light over fear, presence over distraction, truth over illusion. We become more of the arc, more of the color, more of the return. So the question now is not, will the bridge return, but how will we meet it when it does? Will we pause beneath its glow and remember what we are made of? Will we step upon it not with conquest in our hearts, but with reverence in our souls? Will we walk it as the gods once did, not to escape the world, but to connect it, to align it, to bless it? Because the Rainbow Bridge was never just for the gods. It was for all who remembered the way. And now we remember, not with certainty, but with wonder, not with maps, but with music, not with machines, but with meaning. Heimdall still watches. The horn still waits. And in each of us, the final note begins to form, not as a warning, but as a song, a resonance that shakes off the sleep of ages, a tone that doesn't end the world, but reveals its true shape. We were never banished from the realms. We simply forgot how to walk between them. And now, as the bridge glows once more, we are not just the ones who cross. We are the ones who carry the light. We are the shimmer. We are the fire. We are the bridge. And Bifröst was always within us. You have walked the bridge, not through space, but through story. You have remembered a path that bends not only across the sky, but deep within the soul. The colors, the fire, the silence, all echoes of something older than time. And now, the shimmer stays with you. For Bifröst was never far. It lives in your breath, in your dreams, in the quiet between thoughts. And one day, perhaps, when the world is still and the sky opens just so, you will feel it again. And know, you were never just a traveler. You were always the bridge,